I can't take you in, ma'am. The words cut through the howling December wind like a blade, and Sarah watched as the tall cowboy's weathered face hardened into stone. Behind her, little Emma's teeth chattered so violently that Sarah feared they might break. Please, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. My daughter. She's only 4. But how had it come to this moment? How had a respected teacher from Boston ended up begging a stranger for shelter in the middle of a Wyoming blizzard with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a heart full of desperation? 3 months earlier, Sarah Mitchell had been living what she thought was a comfortable life in Beacon Falls. She'd married young to Thomas, a kind bank clerk, and they'd built a modest but happy home together. Emma had been their greatest joy, a bright-eyed little girl with her father's gentle nature and Sarah's determination. Before we embark on this incredible journey together, I have a small, heartfelt favor to ask. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up. It costs you nothing but means the world to me. And let me know in the comments which beautiful corner of the world you're watching from. Your support truly makes all the difference. Then the fever took Thomas in just 5 days. The funeral expenses devoured their small savings. The bank, where Thomas had worked loyally for 7 years, offered no widow's pension. Sarah discovered that Thomas had borrowed against their home to pay for Emma's medical bills when she'd been sick the previous winter. Bills Sarah hadn't even known about. When the eviction notice came, Sarah made a desperate decision. She'd heard whispers of mail-order bride arrangements, of women finding new lives out west. She placed an advertisement in 3 newspapers, describing herself honestly. Widow, 26, former school teacher, 1 child, seeking marriage arrangement with honorable man. The response from Jake Morrison in Red Creek, Wyoming, seemed like providence. His letter was brief but kind. Can offer home, security, and respect for you and your daughter. No expectations beyond companionship and help with ranch work. Sarah had used her last dollars for train tickets west, clutching Emma close through the long, uncomfortable journey. But when they'd finally reached Red Creek 3 days ago, there was no Jake Morrison waiting at the station. The station master's face had grown grim when she'd shown him the letter. Ma'am, Jake Morrison died 2 weeks ago. Horse threw him into a canyon. That's how they'd ended up here at the doorstep of this isolated ranch, with the worst blizzard in decades bearing down and nowhere else to go. The other homesteads were too far to reach on foot, and the station master had mentioned that a man named Cole Brennan lived up the mountain road, a man who mostly kept to himself but wasn't known to be cruel. Now, standing in the driving snow with Emma growing weaker by the minute, Sarah understood that their lives hung in the balance of whatever decision this hard-faced cowboy made in the next few seconds. What the cowboy saw in that moment would haunt him for years to come, not because it was terrible, but because it awakened something in him he'd thought was buried forever. Cole Brennan had opened his door, expecting to find a lost traveler, maybe a neighbor needing help with the storm. Instead, he found a woman who couldn't have been much past 25. Her dark brown hair whipped wild by the wind, holding a small child who was clearly fighting to stay conscious from the cold. The woman's green eyes held a desperate kind of courage that reminded him painfully of someone else, someone he'd lost long ago. Please, she said again, and he noticed how her voice trembled, not just from cold, but from the effort of maintaining dignity in an impossible situation. I know we're strangers, but my daughter won't survive this storm. Cole's practical mind cataloged the facts quickly. The woman's clothes were quality but worn, suggesting someone who'd fallen on hard times rather than someone born to poverty. The child's coat was patched but clean, showing a mother who cared deeply despite having little. Most telling of all, the woman maintained eye contact even while begging. She had pride, which made her desperation all the more real. The smart thing would be to give them directions to town, maybe offer his horse. Cole had learned the hard way that getting involved with people's problems only led to heartbreak. He'd been living alone on this mountain for 3 years, precisely because solitude was safer than caring. But as he looked down at the little girl, she couldn't be much older than his daughter would have been. Something cracked inside his chest. Names, he said gruffly, stepping back from the doorway. Sarah Mitchell. This is Emma. The woman's relief was so profound that she swayed slightly. Thank you, Don't thank me yet. Cole helped them inside, noting how Sarah's legs shook with exhaustion. There's rules. You sleep in the spare room, keep to yourselves, and you leave soon as the storm passes. The warmth of the cabin hit them like a physical force. Emma immediately perked up, her blue eyes growing wide as she took in the rustic interior, the stone fireplace crackling with orange flames, the hand-hewn furniture that spoke of careful craftsmanship, the Cherokee blankets draped over chairs. "It's like a fairy tale house, Mama," Emma whispered, and Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Her daughter had been through so much, yet she could still find wonder in simple warmth and shelter. Cole busied himself building up the fire, uncomfortable with their gratitude. "Kitchen's through there. Help yourselves to whatever food you can find." He paused, his back still turned. "When's the last time either of you ate?" Sarah flushed. "Yesterday morning." The admission cost her, but Emma's well-being mattered more than pride. Without a word, Cole moved to the kitchen area and began pulling items from shelves. Bread, jam, dried meat, milk that he must have gotten from his own cow. He set the food on his rough-hewn table with efficient movements. "Emma needs to get out of those wet clothes," Sarah said, trying to establish some normalcy. "I don't suppose you have anything." Cole disappeared into what must have been his bedroom and returned with a child's nightgown, faded pink with tiny flowers. The sight of it stopped Sarah's breath. "My daughters," he said simply, his voice rougher than before. She was about the same size. The word "was" hung in the air like a ghost, explaining everything and nothing. Sarah understood instinctively not to ask questions, but the gesture, letting Emma wear his dead daughter's clothes, revealed more about Cole Brennan's character than hours of conversation could have. As Emma dozed by the fire in the borrowed nightgown, belly full for the first time in days, Sarah found herself studying their reluctant host. He was probably in his early 30s, tall and lean, with the kind of weathered strength that came from hard physical work. His dark hair needed cutting, and his beard was unkempt, but his hands were gentle when he'd helped Emma with her boots. Everything about this man spoke of someone who had withdrawn from the world, yet here they were, warm and fed because he couldn't turn away a child in need. Outside, the wind howled with renewed fury, rattling the windows and piling snow against the door. Sarah realized with growing unease that they might be trapped here for days, and she had no idea what kind of man she'd entrusted with their lives. But when Cole covered Emma with one of his Cherokee blankets and stoked the fire to burn through the night, Sarah saw something in his profile that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion, a profound loneliness that matched her own. What Sarah discovered the next morning changed everything she thought she knew about the man who'd saved them. She woke to the sound of an axe biting into wood and the smell of coffee brewing. Emma was still curled up by the fire, sleeping peacefully for the first time since they'd left Boston. Through the frosted window, Sarah could see Cole splitting logs with methodical precision, his breath forming white clouds in the frigid air. The storm had intensified overnight, and snow was drifted nearly to the windowsills. They weren't going anywhere soon. Sarah moved quietly through the cabin, taking in details she'd missed in last night's desperate exhaustion. This wasn't the rough bachelor dwelling that she had expected. The furniture was handcrafted with obvious skill, tables with intricate joinery, chairs that fit the human form perfectly. Cherokee blankets weren't just thrown about carelessly. They were displayed with the respect due to art. But it was the small things that caught her attention. A child's wooden horse on the mantelpiece, a woman's shawl folded neatly on a chest, a family Bible with pressed flowers marking pages. "Mama?" Emma's sleepy voice drew her back to the present. "Where are we?" "We're safe, sweetheart. The nice man let us stay until the storm passes." Emma sat up, clutching the borrowed nightgown. "It's so warm here. Can we stay forever?" The innocent question pierced Sarah's heart. How could she explain to a 4-year-old that they had nowhere to go, no money, no prospects? That their presence here was charity, not welcome? Cole's boots stomped on the porch, and he entered with an armload of firewood. His dark eyes swept the room, taking inventory, checking that they were all right without asking directly. "Storm's getting worse," he announced, stacking the wood by the fireplace. "Might be here a few days." Sarah's stomach clenched. A few days of imposed on this man's hospitality felt like a lifetime. We don't want to be a burden. If there's work I can do, you can cook, Cole said bluntly. Haven't had a decent meal in months. It wasn't charity then, but trade. Sarah felt some of her tension ease. I can do that. I was raised by my grandmother. She taught me proper cooking. For the first time since they'd met, Cole's mouth almost curved into a smile. Boston cooking? Vermont country cooking, Sarah corrected with dignity. My grandmother believed city people had forgotten how to eat real food. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Amusement, maybe, or approval. We'll see. Emma padded over to Cole on bare feet, completely unafraid of this large, gruff man. Do you have any animals? She asked with 4-year-old directness. Cole looked uncomfortable with the child's attention. Horses, cows, some chickens. Can I see them? Emma, Sarah warned, but Cole was already moving toward a trunk in the corner. Storm's too bad now, he told Emma, pulling out a child's wool coat, another remnant of his past. But when it clears, maybe. The coat fitted Emma perfectly, and Sarah felt her throat tighten watching Cole's careful hands as he helped Emma with the buttons. Whatever tragedy had taken his family, the muscle memory of caring for a child remained. Tell me about the horses, Emma demanded, settling herself cross-legged by the fire with complete confidence that she'd be entertained. Cole hesitated, glancing at Sarah as if asking permission to engage with her daughter. When Sarah nodded encouragingly, he lowered his tall frame into a chair and began to speak. Got 3 horses, he said slowly, like a man remembering how to converse with children. There's Thunder. He's black with white markings. Thinks he's smarter than me, and he's probably right. Emma giggled, and Sarah saw Cole's shoulders relax slightly. Then there's Daisy. She's older, calmer, good for riding to town. And there's Spirit. She's young, still learning to trust people. Like me, Emma announced. I'm still learning too. Cole's eyes met Sarah's over Emma's head, and something passed between them, an understanding that children's innocence could sometimes cut straight to truth that adults spent years avoiding. As Sarah moved to the kitchen to start breakfast, she wondered what other truths were waiting to be discovered about the man who lived alone on this mountain, with his ghosts and his kindness. What Cole told Sarah about his past came out in fragments, like pieces of a puzzle she was afraid to complete. It was their second day trapped by the storm, and Emma was napping in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Sarah was kneading bread dough at the kitchen table while Cole repaired a bridle near the fire, the domestic scene feeling both natural and impossible. You don't have to tell me, Sarah said quietly when she noticed Cole watching Emma sleep. But how long has it been? His hand stilled on the leather. 3 years. Scarlet fever took them both, my wife Rachel and our daughter Lily. The words came out flat, practiced, like he'd learned to say them without feeling. I'm sorry. The inadequate phrase felt heavy in her mouth. Emma's age. Lily was 4 when she died, would have been 7 now. Cole's voice was steady, but Sarah saw how his knuckles whitened as he gripped the bridle. She was like you, Eastern educated, refined, came out here thinking love would be enough to make a life. Sarah's hands never stopped working the dough, but her chest tightened. And was it? For a while, Cole's dark eyes found hers across the room. Until reality hit. Out here, refined don't keep you warm. Education don't stop disease. Love don't guarantee survival. The warning in his words was clear. Don't mistake this temporary shelter for something more. Don't think a man who'd already buried one Eastern woman and child would be foolish enough to care for another. But Emma chose that moment to stir in her sleep, making soft sounds of distress. Without thinking, Cole set aside his work and moved to her, adjusting the blanket with the same gentle care Sarah had noticed before. Papa? Emma murmured, still lost in dreams. Cole froze, his hand hovering over Emma's hair. For a moment, pain flickered across his features so raw that Sarah had to look away. She still dreams about Thomas, Sarah said softly, giving Cole a way to step back from the moment. Sometimes she forgets he's gone. Cole returned to his chair, but his movements were less steady than before. How long? 4 months. Sarah shaped the bread dough into loaves. Fever, like your family. It took him so fast. She trailed off, realizing they shared this particular grief. And you came west, why? Running from something or towards something? Sarah's hands stilled. She'd have to tell him about Jake Morrison eventually, uh, about the mail-order bride arrangement that had gone wrong, leaving her stranded. But admitting that level of desperation felt dangerous with a man who was already warning her not to expect too much. I thought I was running towards something, she said carefully. A new start. Someone who'd written that he could offer Emma and me a home. Cole's eyes sharpened. Thought? He was dead when we arrived, thrown from a horse 2 weeks before. The silence stretched between them, heavy with understanding. Cole wasn't just offering shelter to a traveler. He was harboring a woman and child who literally had nowhere else to go. So what's your plan now? His voice was gentler than his words. Sarah looked out the window at the endless, white landscape. Fine work, I suppose. I can teach, or maybe find a family who needs help with children. Emma and I don't require much. In Red Creek? Cole's expression was skeptical. Town's got maybe 200 people. They've already got a teacher, and most families barely scrape by themselves. The reality of their situation settled over Sarah like a cold blanket. She'd come west with such hope, such determination to build a new life. Now she saw how naive that hope had been. We'll manage, she said, lifting her chin in the gesture Cole was learning to recognize as her way of facing impossible odds. We have to. Emma woke fully then, sitting up and looking around with the confusion of a child waking in an unfamiliar place. But when she saw Cole, her face lit up with trust that made Sarah's heart ache. Did you tell Mama about the horses yet? Emma asked, climbing into Cole's lap with the casual affection of a child who'd never learned to fear adults. Cole stiffened at first, then relaxed as Emma settled against his chest. Was just getting to that, he said, his voice rougher than usual. As Sarah watched her daughter curl up trustingly against this wounded man, she realized their situation had grown more complicated than simple shelter from a storm. Emma was healing Cole as much as he was helping them, and Sarah didn't know which of them would pay the price when it came time to leave. The evidence that Cole Brennan was not what he seemed came to light on their third morning, and it changed Sarah's understanding of everything. She'd risen early to start breakfast, moving quietly so as not to wake Emma, who was still curled up in Cole's oversized shirt that served as her nightgown. Cole was outside doing morning chores, and Sarah was enjoying the peaceful solitude of the cabin when she noticed something odd about the books on his shelf. The volumes weren't what she'd expect from a simple rancher. Latin texts sat beside agricultural manuals, philosophical treatises next to poetry collections. She pulled one down and opened it to find careful annotations in the margins, notes written in Latin, Greek, and English. Find something interesting? Cole's voice behind her made her jump. She turned, clutching the book, Plutarch's Lives, against her chest. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry, I was just wondering how a mountain hermit came to own university-level texts. Cole took the book from her hands, his fingers brushing hers briefly. Fair question. He set the book back on its shelf with careful precision. I wasn't always a rancher. Went to university back east, Harvard. Was going to be a professor, like my father. Sarah stared at him, recalibrating everything she thought she knew. The careful way he spoke, the precision of his movements, the quality of his furniture. It all made sense now. What happened? Met Rachel. She was visiting Boston with her family, a senator's daughter seeing the sights. Cole's mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. I was completely smitten. Followed her west when her family returned to Colorado, convinced I could make a life out here. And could you? For a while, built this place with my own hands, learned ranching from the ground up. Rachel adapted better than I expected. She was stronger than she looked. Cole moved to the window, staring out at his land. We were happy. I thought I'd found the perfect balance between the life I'd trained for and the life I wanted. Sarah understood the weight of past tense in his words. But the West doesn't care about your education when disease strikes. Doesn't matter if you can read Aristotle in the original Greek when your wife and daughter are dying and the nearest doctor is 3 days ride away. Emma's sleepy voice interrupted from the main room. Mama, is it morning? Yes, sweetheart, Sarah called back, but her eyes remained on Cole's profile. "We'll be right there." As they moved to tend to Emma, Sarah found herself seeing Cole with new eyes. The careful way he helped Emma wash her face wasn't just kindness. It was the practiced patience of an educated man who understood children's needs. The quality of his woodwork was an accident, but the result of someone who approached everything with scholarly precision. "You miss it," she said quietly as they worked together to prepare breakfast. "The academic life." Sometimes, Cole handed Emma a cup of milk, automatically checking that it wasn't too cold. "Mostly I miss having someone to share it with. Rachel used to listen to me read aloud in the evenings. She'd argue philosophy with me over dinner." Sarah felt a pang of recognition. She'd had those same conversations with Thomas, though on a smaller scale. The longing for intellectual companionship was something she understood deeply. "I could," she began, then stopped herself. "What?" "Nothing, I was being presumptuous." But Cole was looking at her with new interest. "You were going to offer to discuss philosophy with a grieving widower?" There was the faintest hint of humor in his voice. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I was a teacher. I miss those kinds of conversations too." Emma, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, was building a fort out of her breakfast biscuits. "Mr. Cole, do your horses know any tricks?" "A few," Cole answered, but his eyes remained on Sarah. "Maybe after breakfast, we'll go see them." Storm's finally clearing. As they prepared to venture outside for the first time since arriving, Sarah realized the storm clearing meant more than just better weather. It meant decisions would have to be made about their future. Decisions that had become infinitely more complicated now that she understood exactly what kind of man had offered them shelter. A man who might understand her mind as well as he'd cared for their bodies. The truth about Cole's horses revealed another layer of the man who seemed determined to remain a mystery. Standing in the barn doorway, watching Emma fearlessly approach Thunder, the massive black stallion who was supposed to be too temperamental for strangers, Sarah realized Cole Brennan had been understating more than just his education. "She's got a natural way with them," Cole observed, leaning against the barn wall. "Most adults are afraid to get that close to Thunder." Emma was stroking the horse's nose with complete confidence, chattering to him about Boston and trains and her papa who'd gone to heaven. Thunder listened with apparent interest, occasionally nickering responses that delighted Emma. "Thomas always said she had a gift with animals," Sarah murmured, then looked more closely at Cole's horses. These weren't the rough ranch horses she'd expected, but animals that had been trained with obvious skill and patience. "You breed them?" "Train them mostly. People bring me the difficult ones. Horses that have been mistreated or are too spirited for most riders." Cole moved to check on Daisy, the gentle mare who was nuzzling Emma's pocket for treats. "Turns out patience and consistency work as well with horses as they do with students." Sarah understood the parallel he was drawing. "Is that what you're doing with us, training us to be manageable?" Cole's dark eyes met hers over Daisy's back. "Is that what you think?" "I think you're a man who helps broken things heal, whether you admit it or not." The words hung in the cold air between them, loaded with more meaning than either wanted to examine too closely. Cole looked away first, his jaw tightening. "Emma, want to help me feed the chickens?" he asked, clearly changing the subject. As they moved through Cole's morning routine, feeding animals, collecting eggs, checking water troughs, Sarah saw how naturally Emma fell into step with him. Her daughter, who'd been shy and withdrawn since Thomas's death, was blooming under Cole's patient attention. "Look, Mama," Emma called, carefully carrying a basket of eggs. "Mr. Cole says I'm a natural farm girl." Sarah felt her chest tighten. Emma was adapting to this life with the resilience of childhood. But what would happen when they had to leave? How would she explain to a 4-year-old that this wasn't their home, that Cole's kindness was temporary? "She's good help," Cole said quietly, walking beside Sarah as they headed back to the cabin. "Haven't had this much conversation in years." "She likes you." Sarah hesitated, then decided to be direct. "She needs a father figure. I worry about what our leaving will do to her." Cole stopped walking, his expression growing guarded. "When are you planning to go?" "I..." Sarah realized she didn't have an answer. The storm was clearing, which meant the road to town would be passable soon. But to what? They had no money, no prospects, nowhere to stay. Soon, I suppose. Suppose isn't a plan. His bluntness stung, but Sarah lifted her chin. I know we can't impose on your hospitality indefinitely. We'll manage somehow. How? Cole's voice was gentle but implacable. With what money? What work? Where will you live? The question she'd been avoiding crashed over her like a cold wave. In Boston, she'd been a respectable widow with skills and references. Here, she was a stranded woman with a child and no resources. Exactly the kind of burden no one wanted to take on. There has to be something. Sarah. Cole's use of her name stopped her mid-sentence. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to understand what you're really facing. Emma ran ahead to the cabin, calling back to them about something she'd seen, her voice bright with happiness. Watching her daughter's joy, Sarah felt tears threaten for the first time since they'd arrived. I don't know, she admitted quietly. I came west thinking I had a solution, and when that fell through, I've been taking it one day at a time, hoping something would present itself. Cole was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma chase one of the barn cats around the porch. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. What if something has? Sarah's heart began to pound, but she didn't dare assume what he meant. Before she could ask, Emma's excited voice carried from the cabin. Mama, Mr. Cole, come see what I found. They hurried inside to find Emma holding up a child's dress she discovered in one of the trunk, a beautiful blue dress with tiny pearl buttons. Can I wear it? Emma asked hopefully. Cole's face had gone very still, and Sarah realized Emma was holding his daughter's Sunday dress. The moment Cole said yes to Emma wearing Lily's dress was the moment Sarah understood that everything between them had shifted into dangerous territory. She watched Cole's hands shake almost imperceptibly as he helped Emma with the tiny pearl buttons, his dark eyes soft with memory and grief and something else. Something that looked dangerously like hope. The blue dress fit Emma perfectly, and when she twirled in delight, Cole's face transformed with an expression Sarah recognized but wished she didn't. He was seeing his daughter in Emma, and more troubling still, he was seeing his wife in Sarah. It's beautiful, Mr. Cole, Emma announced, spinning until the skirt flared around her legs. Do I look like a princess? You look... Cole's voice caught, and he cleared his throat roughly. You look very nice. But Sarah heard what he didn't say, saw it in the way he watched Emma with painful tenderness. She also saw the danger they were all walking into, the danger of substitution, of trying to fill spaces that were meant to remain empty. After Emma ran outside to show the dress to the horses, Sarah found Cole standing by the window, his shoulders tense with some internal struggle. Cole? She kept her voice gentle but firm. We can't do this. He didn't pretend not to understand. Can't do what? Let Emma become your daughter's replacement. Let me become... She couldn't finish the sentence. Become what, Sarah? He turned to face her, and she was startled by the intensity in his dark eyes. My wife's replacement? Is that it what you think is happening here? Isn't it? The question came out more challenged than she'd intended. Cole was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving from Sarah to Emma, visible through the window. When he spoke, his words were measured, careful. Rachel was nothing like you. She was gentle where you're strong, fragile where you're resilient. She needed protecting. You do the protecting. He paused, his eyes finding Sarah's again. And Lily, Emma has her own spirit. I'm not seeing ghosts when I look at either of you. Then what are you seeing? The question slipped out before Sarah could stop it. I'm seeing... Cole struggled with the words. I'm seeing what I thought I'd lost forever. Not Rachel and Lily, but the possibility of family, of not being alone. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. They were approaching territory that couldn't be unexplored once crossed. Cole, we barely know each other. A few days of shared shelter doesn't what? Doesn't give us the right to consider possibilities? Cole took a step closer, and Sarah caught the scent of leather and wood smoke that seemed to cling to him. Sarah, you have no money, no prospects, nowhere to go. Emma needs stability, a home. I have both, but I've been dying of loneliness up here. So we'd be convenient for each other? Sarah tried to keep hurt from her voice. A practical arrangement? Would that be so terrible? Cole's voice was quiet, but there was something vulnerable in it that caught Sarah off guard. Marriage doesn't have to be about grand passion. It can be about partnership, mutual benefit, respect. Sarah felt something crumble inside her chest. After Thomas, her beloved Thomas who'd loved her completely, the idea of a marriage based on convenience felt like settling for crumbs when she'd once had a feast. But looking out at Emma, radiant in her borrowed dress and laughing with pure joy for the first time in months, Sarah had to ask herself, what was more important, her romantic dreams or her daughter's future? "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked carefully. Cole's jaw tightened, but he met her gaze steadily. "Marriage, Ishwayation, legal and binding, but companionate. You'd have security. Emma would have a home and a father figure. I'd have," he paused, "company, conversation, someone to care about besides myself. And affection?" The word came out smaller than Sarah intended. Cole's expression softened. "I think we could grow to care for each other deeply, given time. The foundation is already there. We work well together. You understand my mind. Emma has already captured my heart." Sarah felt tears threaten and blinked them back. It wasn't love, but it was honest. It wasn't romance, but it was safety. Before she could answer, Emma burst through the door, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. "Mama, Mr. Cole, can we stay here forever and ever, please?" Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah thought, looking between her hopeful daughter and the man who was offering them everything they needed, everything except the grand love story Sarah had once believed in. Sarah's answer came not in words, but in a moment of crisis that revealed what her heart already knew. It happened on their fifth morning when Emma developed a fever that spiked so quickly it sent Sarah into a panic that threatened to consume her reason. One moment Emma was playing happily with the barn cat, the next she was burning up and barely responsive, her small body shaking with chills that reminded Sarah too vividly of Thomas's final days. "Get some cool water," Cole commanded, taking charge with the calm authority of a man who'd faced this nightmare before. "We need to bring her temperature down." Sarah's hands shook as she pumped water, her mind spiraling into the darkest places. Not Emma, not her baby girl. She couldn't lose Emma, too. "Sarah," Cole's voice cut through her rising hysteria. "Look at me." She turned, clutching the water basin, and found Cole holding Emma gently but securely, his dark eyes steady and sure. "This isn't the same fever," he said quietly. "I can see it in her symptoms. This is just a child's illness. Frightening but treatable. She's not going to die." "How can you know that?" Sarah's voice broke on the words. "Because I've seen both kinds of fever. This one we can fight." Cole began stripping Emma of her clothes with gentle efficiency. "Get me more blankets. We'll cool her down, get some willow bark tea into her, and sit with her until it passes." For the next 18 hours, Sarah barely left Emma's side. She bathed her daughter's burning skin, coaxed medicine down her throat, sang every lullaby she could remember. But it was Cole who became her anchor, checking Emma's temperature with experienced hands, adjusting their treatment as needed, never showing the fear that Sarah knew he must have felt. "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked during one of the long night hours when Emma was finally sleeping peacefully, her fever beginning to break. Cole looked up from the book he'd been reading aloud, something about brave knights and clever princesses that had held Emma's attention during her wakeful moments. "Doing what?" "Caring for us like we're," Sarah gestured helplessly, "like we're family." Cole closed the book carefully, marking his place. "Because you are family. Maybe not by blood or law yet, but in every way that matters." "Yet?" Sarah caught the word, her heart jumping. "I thought about what I said before, about marriage being practical, companionate." Cole's eyes found hers across Emma's sleeping form. "I was wrong, or at least I was incomplete." Sarah waited, not trusting herself to speak. "Watching you these past hours, seeing how you fight for Emma, how you've never stopped fighting even when everything went wrong." Cole's voice grew soft. "I realized I don't want a convenient marriage. I want to marry you, Sarah Mitchell. Not because it's practical, but because I love you." The words hit Sarah like lightning, illuminating everything she'd been trying not to acknowledge. The way her heart raced when Cole smiled, the way she'd begun thinking of this cabin as home, the way she'd started imagining a future that included this kind, wounded, brilliant man. "Cole?" she began, then stopped as Emma stirred. "Mama?" Emma's voice was weak but clear. "Is the fever gone?" Sarah pressed her lips to Emma's forehead, relief flooding through her as she felt normal temperature. "Yes, sweetheart, the fever's gone." Emma looked around until she found Cole, then reached out with small arms. "Mr. Cole, were you scared too?" Cole lifted Emma gently, settling her against his chest. "Yes, little one, I was scared, but your mama took very good care of you. And you helped," Emma said with 4-year-old certainty. "You're good at taking care of people." Over Emma's head, Cole's eyes met Sarah's, and she saw her own truth reflected there. They were already a family in everything but name. The love was already there, growing quietly but surely in the spaces between crisis and comfort, between practical help and tender care. "Yes," Sarah said quietly, answering both Emma's observation and Cole's earlier declaration. "He is good at taking care of people." Cole's smile transformed his entire face, and Sarah realized that some love stories didn't begin with lightning bolts, but with quiet recognition. The understanding that home wasn't a place, but the people who fought for each other when everything else fell apart. The proposal that followed Emma's recovery was nothing like what Sarah might have imagined, and yet it was perfect in its imperfection. It happened 3 days later, when Emma was strong enough to play outside again, and Sarah was hanging laundry on the line Cole had strung behind the cabin. The domestic scene felt both natural and miraculous. She'd never expected to find herself caring for another man's clothes, humming softly as she worked in the crisp mountain air. "Sarah." Cole's voice behind her was unusually formal, and she turned to find him standing with his hat in his hands, looking for all the world like a nervous schoolboy. "What is it?" She set down the laundry basket, suddenly alert to his mood. "I've been thinking about what I said the other night, about love and marriage," and he cleared his throat. "I realize I did this backwards." Sarah tilted her head, confused. "Did what backwards?" Instead of answering, Cole dropped to one knee in the dirt beside the laundry line, still clutching his hat. Emma, who'd been playing with the barn cat nearby, stopped to stare in fascination. "Sarah Mitchell," Cole said solemnly, "I know we've only known each other a week. I know you came west expecting to marry a different man entirely. I know I'm damaged goods, a widower with too many ghosts and not enough social graces." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "But I also know that I love you. Not because you remind me of Rachel, you don't. Not because Emma reminds me of Lily, she doesn't. I love you because you're brave enough to cross a continent for your daughter's future. Because you make my coffee taste better just by being here to share it. Because you argue with me about Plutarch and win." A smile tugged at his mouth. "Because watching you, Mother Emma, makes me believe in goodness again." Sarah felt tears begin to spill over, but Cole wasn't finished. "I don't have much to offer besides this land, this life, and a heart that's been broken but is apparently capable of healing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band, worn but beautiful. "This was my grandmother's ring. It's not much, but it's honest." Emma crept closer, her eyes wide with understanding. "Mama, is Mr. Cole asking to be my new papa?" Cole's eyes moved to Emma, his expression tender. "I'm asking if you'd both like to be my family. Forever and always." Sarah looked down at this man who'd knelt in the dirt to offer her everything he had, then at her daughter whose face was bright with hope, then at the mountains and sky that surrounded the home they'd built together in just 1 week. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Cole Brennan, we'd like to be your family." Cole's smile was like sunrise as he stood and slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Emma launched herself at Cole with a whoop of joy that sent the chickens scattering. "Can I call you Papa now?" Cole caught her easily, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I'd like that very much." As Sarah watched Cole spin Emma around while she giggled with delight, she realized that some fairy tales didn't end with happily ever after. They began with it. The real story wasn't about finding love, but about choosing it, day after day, in all the small moments that made up a life. The wedding itself was simple, held in the small church in Red Creek 3 weeks later, with the pastor's wife standing as Sarah's witness and the town doctor as Cole's. Emma stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, her face solemn with the importance of the moment. Do you, Cole, take Sarah to be your wife in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse? I do. Do you, Sarah, take Cole to be your husband in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse? Sarah looked into Cole's dark eyes and saw their whole future there. Arguments and laughter, hard work and quiet evenings, the challenges and joys of raising Emma together, and maybe, God willing, other children too. I do. When Cole kissed her, it tasted like promises kept and new beginnings, like coffee shared on cold mornings and whispered conversations by firelight. Emma clapped her hands in delight, and the small congregation, mostly neighbors who'd come out of curiosity about Cole Brennan's mysterious bride, smiled their approval. They were family now, legally and truly, bound by love and law and the simple miracle of finding each other against all odds. The first real test of their marriage came 6 months later, when Cole's past arrived uninvited on their doorstep. Sarah was teaching Emma her letters at the kitchen table when she heard horses approaching. Not the familiar sound of neighbors, but the disciplined rhythm of multiple riders. Through the window, she saw 4 men in expensive suits, their horses too fine for this rough country. Cole, she called, and he emerged from the barn where he'd been working with Spirit, the young mare who'd finally learned to trust. The lead rider dismounted with the practiced ease of money and authority. He was older, gray-haired, with the kind of face that was used to being obeyed. Professor Brennan, the man said, and Sarah felt her stomach drop at the title Cole no longer used. Senator Patterson. Cole's voice was carefully neutral, but Sarah caught the tension in his shoulders. What brings you to Wyoming? You do, actually. Senator Patterson's eyes swept over the humble ranch, the simple cabin, and finally Sarah standing in the doorway with Emma peeking out from behind her skirts. I have a proposition for you, miss. Sarah knew without being told that this man was connected to Rachel. The resemblance was clear in his bearing, his assumption of authority. Rachel's father, most likely, come to reclaim something he thought Cole had taken. Sarah, Cole called without turning around, would you take Emma inside? I want to meet your new family first, Senator Patterson interrupted smoothly. May I? He approached the porch with the kind of confidence that expected welcome. Senator Patterson, Cole said reluctantly, my wife Sarah, and our daughter Emma. Sarah caught the deliberate possessive in our daughter and felt a fierce surge of gratitude. Whatever this man wanted, Cole wasn't going to let him diminish Emma's place in their family. Mrs. Brennan, the senator's smile was polished and empty. How lovely. I can see why Cole was eager to replace what he'd lost. The insult was subtle but unmistakable. Sarah lifted her chin and met his gaze directly. Senator, I'm afraid you have the advantage. Cole hasn't mentioned you. A flicker of surprise crossed the senator's face. Clearly, he'd expected to be remembered, discussed, feared. I'm Rachel's father, he said, as if that explained everything. Evening. I've come to offer Cole an opportunity to return to his proper place in the world. This is my proper place, Cole said quietly, but there was steel underneath the words. Is it? Senator Patterson gestured at the simple ranch. A Harvard-educated man, wasting his brilliance on cattle and chickens? Cole, I'm offering you the chance to return to Boston. There's a position waiting at the university, department chair, excellent salary, a house in Cambridge. All you have to do is come home. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Boston, the life Cole had trained for, the intellectual stimulation he sometimes missed, the respect and recognition that came with being Professor Brennan instead of a simple rancher. And Sarah? Cole asked. Emma? Senator Patterson's pause was telling. Well, naturally, if you're determined to maintain your current domestic situation, I suppose arrangements could be made. The condescension in his voice made Sarah's hands clench into fists. Emma, sensing tension, pressed closer to Sarah's side. Mama, Emma whispered, I don't like that man. The child is quite direct, Senator Patterson observed with distaste. Children in proper Boston society are taught more discretion. That did it. Sarah stepped forward, Emma's hand firmly in hers. Senator Patterson, she said with the crisp authority she'd once used on unruly students, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You seem to think Cole has been waiting for rescue from his life here. But this isn't exile, it's choice. He built this home, this family, this life because it's what he wants. And what about what's best for him? The senator's mask was slipping, revealing impatience underneath. This woman knows nothing of Cole's true potential, his brilliant pinon, his... She knows exactly what I am, Cole interrupted, moving to stand beside Sarah. And more importantly, she loves what I am, not what she thinks I should become. The senator's eyes narrowed. Rachel loved your potential too, Cole. Look how that turned out. The cruel words hung in the air like poison, and Sarah saw Cole flinch as if struck. But before she could respond, Emma spoke up in her clear 4-year-old voice. Papa doesn't need to be anything different. He's perfect just like he is. Cole's expression transformed, and he knelt to Emma's level. Thank you, little one. That means more than you know. When he stood, his decision was written clearly on his face. Thank you for the offer, Senator, but my answer is no. What happened next proved that some battles for love require more than just words, and Sarah discovered exactly how far she'd go to protect the family they'd built. Senator Patterson didn't accept Cole's refusal gracefully. Over the following weeks, Sarah began noticing troubling signs. Property markers moved in the night, fence posts cut, water troughs mysteriously damaged. It became clear that the senator was trying to make their life so difficult that Cole would reconsider his offer. The final confrontation came on a blazing August afternoon when Sarah found Emma's favorite doll, the one Cole had carved for her, hanging from a tree branch near the house, deliberately destroyed. That's enough, Sarah announced, marching into the cabin where Cole was reviewing ranch accounts. We're not going to be terrorized by that man. Cole looked up from his ledgers, taking in her blazing eyes and set jaw. Sarah, what happened? She showed him the destroyed doll and watched his face grow thunderous. He's escalating. Next, it might not be toys. Sarah had been thinking the same thing, but hearing Cole voice her fears crystallized her resolve. Then we stop him. How? He's got money, political connections, and no scruples about using them. Sarah moved to Cole's desk and pulled out paper and pen. He has those things, but we have something he doesn't. Which is? We have the truth, and we have people who care about truth. Sarah began writing with swift, decisive strokes. I'm writing to the territorial governor, the federal land office, and the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. I'm detailing every act of harassment, every attempt at intimidation. Cole read over her shoulder as she wrote, his expression shifting from skepticism to admiration. You're building a legal case. I'm building an evidentiary record. Every cut fence, every moved marker, every destroyed item. And I'm sending copies to 3 different newspapers, including one in Boston. Sarah, Cole's voice held warning, you're talking about going to war with a United States senator. No, I'm talking about protecting my family from a bully who thinks his political position gives him the right to terrorize us. Sarah's pen never stopped moving. Emma asked me yesterday why her doll was broken. What was I supposed to tell her? That some people think they can destroy what we love just because we won't do what they want? Cole was quiet for a long moment, watching his wife transform from gentle schoolteacher into fierce protector. When he spoke, his voice was soft with something that might have been awe. Rachel would never have fought like this. Sarah's hands stilled on the paper. Are you comparing us again? No. Oh. Cole turned her chair so she faced him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I'm realizing how lucky I am that you're nothing like Rachel. She would have begged me to take the senator's offer, to avoid conflict, to choose the safe path. His thumbs traced her cheekbones. You're choosing to fight for us. Of course I'm fighting for us. Sarah's voice was fierce. This is our home, our life, our family. No one gets to take that away. Cole kissed her then, deep and thorough, with all the passion they'd been building toward over months of growing love. When they broke apart, his eyes were blazing with something that matched her own fire. What do you need me to do? Sarah smiled, and it was a warrior's smile. Help me gather evidence, document everything, and then we're going to town to file complaints with every authority we can find. The campaign that followed was methodical and devastating. Sarah's Eastern education served her well as she crafted letters that were formal, detailed, and impossible to dismiss. Cole's knowledge of law and procedure helped them navigate bureaucratic channels. Together, they built a case that painted Senator Patterson as exactly what he was, a powerful man abusing his position for personal revenge. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later, when Cole rode into town and found Sarah waiting for him at the telegraph office, her face bright with triumph. "What is it?" he asked, dismounting quickly. "Telegram from the governor's office." Sarah waved the paper like a victory flag. "They're opening an investigation into Senator Patterson's activities. Seems several other people have complained about similar harassment tactics." Cole swept her off her feet, spinning her around right there in the dusty street. "My brilliant, fierce wife." When he set her down, Sarah's expression grew serious. "It's not over yet. But Cole, win or lose, we fought for each other. That's what matters." "We're going to win," Cole said with quiet certainty, "because we're fighting for love, and that always wins in the end." As they rode home together, the mountains purple with evening light and Emma visible on the porch waiting for them, Sarah realized that their greatest victory wasn't legal. It was the absolute certainty that they'd face anything together. 2 years later, Sarah stood on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching Cole teach Emma to ride Spirit, the once wild mare who now responded to a 4-year-old's gentle commands with perfect trust. The morning sun caught the gold of Emma's hair and the silver threading through Cole's dark beard, painting the scene with the kind of light that made ordinary moments feel sacred. "Mama, look!" Emma called, guiding Spirit in a careful circle around the corral. "I'm really riding." "I see, sweetheart," Sarah called back, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her growing belly. "You're a natural horsewoman." The legal case against Senator Patterson had ended better than they dared hope. The investigation had revealed a pattern of intimidation tactics spanning multiple territories, and the senator had been quietly censured and stripped of several committee positions. More importantly, the harassment had stopped completely. Word of their victory had spread through the territory, bringing Cole an unexpected form of respect. Neighboring ranchers began seeking his advice, not just on horses, but on legal matters, land disputes, and education for their children. Sarah found herself teaching again, not in a formal school, but tutoring ranch children whose parents rode hours to bring them to her kitchen table for lessons. Their life had found a rhythm that satisfied both Cole's intellectual needs and their practical ones. Evening conversations still ranged from philosophy to ranch management, but now they included Emma's bright questions and observations that often cut straight to the heart of complex matters. "Papa," Emma announced, dismounting from Spirit with Cole's help, "when the baby comes, can I teach them to ride too?" Cole's eyes found Sarah's across the yard, warm with the love that had deepened into something unshakable over 2 years of shared challenges and quiet joys. "If your mama says it's all right," he answered diplomatically. "The baby won't be ready to ride for quite a while," Sarah said, moving carefully down the porch steps to join them. "But yes, when the time comes, you can help teach them." Emma beamed with importance. "I'll be the best big sister ever." As they walked toward the house together, Cole's arm around Sarah's waist, Emma skipping ahead with the barn cat following, Sarah reflected on the unexpected turns that had brought them to this moment. She'd come west as a desperate widow seeking any kind of security, and instead had found a love deeper than her first marriage, a home more beautiful than her Boston dreams, and a future brighter than she'd dared imagine. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked quietly, noticing her reflective mood. "Just all of it. How different everything is from what I planned." "Better or worse than you expected?" Sarah leaned into his warmth, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and wood smoke in the wild mountain air that now meant home to her. "Better, so much better than I knew how to hope for." That evening, after Emma was asleep and the ranch work was done, Sarah and Cole sat on their porch watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Cole was reading aloud from a new book of poetry he had ordered from Denver, his voice rich in the mountain stillness. "The best thing to hold on to in life is each other," he read, then looked up at Sarah. "Think that's true?" Sarah considered the question, thinking of all they'd weathered together, the desperate beginning, the senator's threats, the daily challenges of building a life in unforgiving country. Through it all, the certainty of each other had been their anchor. I think, she said slowly, that holding on to each other isn't enough by itself. I think the magic happens when you choose to fight for each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Cole closed the book and pulled Sarah closer against his side. My wise wife. My stubborn husband, she replied fondly. They sat in comfortable silence, Sarah's head on Cole's shoulder, his hand resting protectively over their growing child. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of their animals settling for the night, the gentle lowing of cattle, the soft nickering of horses, the rustling of chickens in their coop. No regrets? Cole asked quietly. About Boston, about the life you might have had there? Sarah thought of her small apartment in Boston, of the lonely evenings and uncertain future she'd fled. Then she thought of Emma's laughter echoing through their home, of Cole's rare but brilliant smiles, of the community they'd built with their neighbors, of the child groaning beneath her heart. No regrets, she said firmly. This is exactly where I belong. As if summoned by their conversation, Emma appeared in the doorway in her nightgown, rubbing sleepy eyes. I had a dream, she announced. I dreamed the baby was here, and it was a boy and he had Papa's dark hair and Mama's green eyes. Sarah and Cole exchanged amused glances. Just a dream, sweetheart, Sarah said gently. Come here. Emma patted over and climbed onto Cole's lap, settling against his chest with the complete trust she'd shown him from the very beginning. Will you love the baby as much as you love me? Emma asked with 4-year-old directness. Oh, little one, Cole said softly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Love isn't like food that gets used up when you share it. It's like a candle flame. You can light as many other candles as you want, and the first flame never gets smaller. Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. So there's enough love for everyone? More than enough, Sarah assured her. Love grows bigger when you share it. As Cole carried Emma back to bed and Sarah followed, her hand resting on her belly, she realized that their love story wasn't ending. It was expanding, deepening, becoming something that would shelter not just the three of them, but the generations that might follow. Some fairy tales ended with happily ever after, but the best ones understood that happiness wasn't a destination, but a choice made new each day. And Sarah Mitchell Brennan, watching her husband tuck their daughter into bed with infinite gentleness, knew she'd choose this happiness every day for the rest of her life. Outside, the Wyoming wind sang through the mountains, carrying the promise of tomorrow's adventures on its wings. Thank you so much for joining me on Sarah and Cole's journey. If this story touched your heart, I'd be incredibly grateful if you'd subscribe to my channel and share it with someone who loves a good romance. What's your favorite moment from their love story? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below.